Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 2023 Town of Carmel Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Your board members' names are in front of you on the dais. We have Town Council Greg Fulchetti is with us tonight, as well as Mike Carnazza, Code Enforcement Officer. The way we operate is I will ask you to come up. Whoever's going to be speaking, I will swear you in. Looks like we have a big crowd tonight, many speakers possibly. So we're actually going to limit any public speaking to 3 minutes. Please be respectful of that time. We all have families as well we want to get home to. So let's keep it. And, any repetitive information, I'm just going to cut you off because, if someone is repeating something that we've heard already, we have to be respectful of everyone's time. And we do have, in a particular case, we do have written notifications from some neighbors and whatnot. So please be respectful of that. The way we operate is I'll ask you to come up, I'll swear you in, we'll hear your case. Once we close a case, there's no further public input. So once we close the hearing, there's no further input. Will you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, first case tonight is a holdover from last month. It's Lucio and Cynthia Roca for a variation of section 156-15, seeking a variance for permission to retain 2 sheds and a metal carport. Property is located at 56 Ernhofer Drive, Carmel, New York, and it's tax map 77.13-2-37. The code requires and allows for the westerly shed 40 feet, 5'8" is provided. A variance of 34.4 inches is being requested. On the easterly shed, 40 feet is required. What's provided is 12 foot 7 feet, and the variance being requested is 27.5, or it's 27 feet 5 inches. And then there's a metal carport. The setback for that, which is allowed, is 40 feet. What's provided is 6 inches, and the variance required on that is 39 feet 6 inches. All right, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Is this on?
Yeah, I'll remind everyone, please speak clearly into the microphone. This is being recorded for minutes, so we'll ask you all to please speak clearly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Frank J. Smith III, Law Office of Schilling and Smith, attorney for the applicants, Lucio and Cynthia Roca. Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I'd like to draw your attention to an error that was made in our application. We had put it down as requiring a 40-yard setback. This is a side yard setback, so it requires 20 feet, or I'm sorry, 40 foot as opposed to 40 yard. It requires 20 feet as opposed to 40 feet. So it is making the variance that we are requesting this evening smaller than what we had let you know, and also that we noticed.
Okay. Greg, would we have to, it's a lesser of a request, so we would have to re-advertise it, correct?
You wouldn't. The error is in reverse of what you would require re-advertising for. If he noticed it as a 40-foot and it was actually 20-foot, I would say you would have to.
All right, we'll need you to we'll make the change on the original.
Absolutely.
And then,
And I can initial that.
Frank, which one is it, the easterly or westerly?
It's all three,
all-
actually.
all
They're on
on
the
the
same
side,
property
right?
boundary line.
Okay. So John, I did the numbers for you.
And the metal carport.
All three are on.
He did the numbers for you.
Yes, I'm looking
Where?
at it.
Ready?
On this original?
So
Oh, you
it's-
have it.
Required 20, 20, 20, they're all 20s.
Yeah, I got that change already.
And the variances are 14 feet 4 inches.
Wait. Oh, 14, for the,
Yeah,
Required.
Westerly, yeah.
7'5",
7'5" and 19'6".
19'6".
oh, that's easy math, Mike. I could have
Yep.
done that. 19.6.
Not .6.
Yep.
19 feet
19
6
feet
inches.
6
19
inches.
foot 6 inches. You got your
Good
own
there,
pen.
John. Good thing I have to take off my shoes.
I went to Mahopac High School, Mahopac High School.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Rocca. He's to my left. The property is located at 56 Ernhofer Drive, Carmel, known as tax map number 77.13-2-37. The property consists of roughly .71 acres and is located in the town's residential zoning district. The relief requested this evening is dimensional in the form of area variance to retain 2 sheds and a metal carport. The westerly shed requires a setback of 20 feet. The applicant provides 5 feet 8 inches, requiring a variance of 14 feet 5 inches. The easterly shed requires a setback of 20 feet. The applicant provides 12 feet 7 inches, requiring a variance of 7 feet 5 inches. The carport also requires a 20-foot setback. The applicant provides 6 inches, requiring a variance of 19 feet 6 inches. Prior to the hearing, my office provided to the board a memorandum of law, a letter of support from a direct neighbor, and a client affidavit. The applicants purchased the property in 1996 and have resided there nearly 27 years. Mr. Rocca placed the structures in this area because it is one of the only level areas on the property, and also so they did not interfere with the property's septic lines. These structures have also been in existence for more than 20 years. It's important to note that prior to placing the structures in their location, Mr. Rocca sought the approval of his northerly neighbor, who he shares a boundary line with, and that is the boundary where the structures would be placed. At the time, he obtained the blessing of his neighbor. Along with our submission, we included a letter of support from Mr. Philip DeCenso. Mr. DeCenso resides at 62 Ernhofer Drive. That's the property that shares the boundary line and where the carport and the sheds are located. Mr. DeCenso expressed no objection to the structure's placement. As the board is aware, there are 5 criteria when considering an area variance. First, and most importantly, whether granting the variance will cause an adverse impact to the neighborhood. Next, whether the need for variance could be obviated. Third, whether the variance is substantial. Fourth, whether granting the variance would result in adverse environmental impacts. And lastly, whether the difficulty was self-created. For the foregoing reasons, I contend that the applicant meets the criteria of the area variance analysis. First, most importantly, should the variance be granted, there would be no adverse change to the surrounding neighborhood. The use of sheds and carports are permitted in this zoning district, and their deficiency is merely dimensional. In addition, the neighbor most affected by the placement of the sheds and the carport has submitted a letter to the board with no objections to their placement. This is along with the sheds and the carport being in existence for more than 20 years. Second, the board must consider whether the applicant could obviate the need for variance. In this case, he could not. The sheds and carports are placed in an area on the property that is flat and can suit the structures. Due to the property's slope and placement of the septic lines, there is no other feasible location. Third, the board must consider substantiality. In this instance, although the variances requested are large, it is due to the property containing no other suitable areas to place the sheds or the carport. Fourth, permitting the variance would not result in a negative impact to the environment. The sheds and carport are common in residential districts and pose no detrimental effect to the environment surrounding it. Lastly, the board must consider whether the need for variance was self-created. The question of self-created difficulty is not dispositive and in and of itself does not serve as a bar to variance when considered with the other 4 factors. In this case, the difficulty was caused by the layout of the property, and the sheds and the carport are placed in their current location due to that. Based upon these factors, I think that while weighing the criteria of the area variance analysis, the benefit to the applicant does not result in any detriment nor adverse consequence to the surrounding neighborhood, and they should be granted. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, both me and Mr. Rocca are available.
Okay, so you didn't know you needed a permit when you built these
Did you
sheds, or?
swear, you gotta swear him in.
Well, I'm asking Frank,
yes,
but are you going to
yes.
speak, Mr. Rocca? Yeah. Then raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. And just state your name and address for the record.
Lucio Roca, 56.
Talking to the mic.
Yeah, there's two mics there.
Lucio Roca, 56 on Norfolk Drive, Carmel, New York.
Okay, thank you. So you didn't know you needed to get a permit at the time?
No, I didn't. It
And
was
how
about
long have
26
these-
years ago.
How long have these structures been there?
The sheds are there 26 years.
You can put your hand down now. And the carport, about the same time, or?
No, the carport about 3-4 years ago.
Okay, I noticed a lot of vehicles in there. You're not doing any car repairs
No,
commercially
not at
or
all.
anything, right?
Not at all. It's just a point to park a car.
Okay. Is there any other property you could buy to lessen the need for this variance and to conform? There's no property, you're landlocked there, correct?
Yeah, on both sides, there are residential structures.
Okay. All right, board members, any questions or comments? John?
No further questions.
Thank you.
What are the sheds being used for?
The lawnmower tractors,
What about, is the carport necessary?
it's 3 cars underneath. That's where we park.
All right, I have nothing further, thank you.
No questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody in the public have any questions or comments on this application?
Motion to close the
Motion to
public
close.
hearing?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
guys.
Chairman. Have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
No. All right, next application tonight is Kiwi Country Day Camp for variation of section 156-10A, seeking a variance for permission to expand the day camp onto adjacent residential lot already occupied as one-family dwelling. The property is located at 825 Union Valley Road, Mahopac, New York, tax map 77.17-1-31 and 32. The code requires or allows one main building and one accessory building on one lot. What's provided is expansion day camp onto adjacent residential lot already occupied as one-family dwelling, and the variance required or being sought is applicant seeks interpretation that the property has Town of Carmel approval to permit 2 principal uses on one lot per filed map number 2857, or in the alternative, a use variance to permit 2 principal uses on one lot. Does this about sum it up, Bill?
Yes, sir.
All right, good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is William Schilling. I
Bill, just
represent-
speak into the microphone, please.
That better? I represent Kiwi Country Day Camp. Will Yara is with me this evening. He is the director, has been the director for 7 years. The project engineer is from Inside Engineer, named Adam Thyberg. Both of them will be able to discuss if requested. Property is located on Union Valley Road. The camp has been in existence for 71 years. It is in a residential zone. Currently, it employs approximately 200 employees, most of whom are local. Currently, its service is about 900 campers. Most are within a 30-mile radius. Kiwi Camp is an integral part of the town of Carmel. It issues scholarships. It attends and involves itself in fundraisers. It's involved intimately in both the school districts, both Carmel and Mahopac, in their functions. The property consists of 2 tax lots. The first tax lot is number 3032, and 32 is the camp. It has got all of the indicia of the camp that is, the principal part of the application. Lot 31 is only 3 acres. On the property is a single-family residence, but also, and this is the significant part of what I'd like to talk to you about, there is a half-acre ball field on the property. That is an integral part of Kiwi Country Camp. The ball field is shown on a site plan signed by the Carmel chairman of the planning board in 2001. It is a large part of the site plan, and you'll see that the ballpark is shown clearly on it. So we know that the ballpark has been in existence for at least 20 years. And so currently, there can be no question that there are two principal uses currently on that property. One is a camp use, and the other is a residential use. The ball field was also memorialized in a 2011 easement that was filed in the Putnam County Clerk's office. So again, more evidence that the ball field is a big part of Kiwi. During all this time, my client spent substantial amount of expenditures creating, altering, and maintaining that ball field for a period of over 20 years. And our position is the fact that it's been recognized by the town of Carmel in its planning board, that it's memorialized in an easement in the county clerk, and that there's been substantial expenditures in keeping that up, that use is legally vested. And what that means is the issue of there being two principal uses on one lot has been cleared. It's legal because of the doctrine of vesting. So we think as a matter of law that there are two principal legal uses on the one lot. We seek that interpretation from you, that currently there are two legal uses on one lot, and they're legal because of the doctrine of vesting, which I sent to you via my memorandum of law. Or in the alternative, we seek a use variance to permit two uses on one lot. It's clear that this should have been done a long time ago. It's clear that it should have been part of the process that precedes the planning board. The zoning board in 2001 should have had this issue before it went to the planning board for approval. It's clear that a 2005 variance granted by this board should have incorporated the issue of two principal uses on one lot. It didn't. It decided a whole lot of things about improvements and enlargements, but it didn't address this issue. So Mike Carnazza, the building inspector, has an issue with this, and that issue is that of one that he calls a cleanup, and I agree with him. It never, I was hoping to have a gotcha moment with Mike where I was hoping they had done it before, but through those two processes, it just didn't happen. So this is a cleanup that I think is appropriate and is why we're here today. If you find that vesting didn't occur, we're seeking a use for variance. That will clean the slate. If you find that there was vesting, then it's a legal use, and that will clear it up as well. In support of our application, we've submitted the director's affidavit. We submitted our memorandum of law. I gave you a copy of the 2001 site plan that had the ball field on it. I've given you a copy of the 2005 ZBA decision and order, which had all these use variances granted, but failed to incorporate this most important one. We'll also ask the director to speak briefly at the end. I know you have a busy agenda. We'll be pretty quick, I think. The facts of the matter is, for 71 years, this camp has been in existence, 200 employees, 900 campers. It is an important outdoor experience for young people. Myself, personally, I think it's wonderful that there's a group of kids without phones and without computers, but that's just my personal opinion.
Don't bring up phones.
Don't bring up phones. Please. Lot
I'm
32.
sure they still have them with them.
Say it again?
Playing sports or not, they have their phones glued to them.
They're not supposed to. How about that? Lot 32, the big one, has all the vestiges of a camp. It has the ball fields, the trails, it has the basketball courts, it has the pools and all that. Lot 31, the lot in question, has the single-family residence, as you know, and then it has this ball field. It also does have some camp apparatus and some zip lines, but this is the lot that's the focus of our attention tonight. So in 2001, the planning board did a site plan and signed it off. The chairman signed off and showed Lot 31 was subject to this this ball field. And the map was filed, of course, in the county clerk's office. The ball field, again, was created in substantial expenditures, and I think that all these things combined renders the use as vested, and the dual use is established. Again, very briefly, in 2005, there was a significant application before the zoning board with many variances requested, and they gave use variances. They made a unanimous finding that all the criteria of use variance was met in that application and granted the app, but did not address the issue of the two principal uses on one lot. So currently, now, we're only seeking that issue, that clarity and consistency indicates that we have to get this relief in order to move forward before the planning board. So we're asking for an interpretation from you that because of all the things I mentioned, the site plan, the improvements, the substantial improvements made, the recording of the easement, and all the reliance made, that ball field is a vested camp right, and hence there's two legal uses on one lot. And then the issue is resolved, and if you reject the issue of vesting, then we simply request a use variance that two uses, a camp use and a residential, can exist on one lot. We submitted all our criteria in our application and in our memorandum. The planning board record that came from before Michael, the previous application for planning board, which got sent to you, the ZBA has been asked to just check on this one issue and whether or not there can be and there should be two uses on one lot. This is the cleanup issue. Again, I think it was more neglect or mistake that it's not, but it hasn't been in any of the record that I've reviewed all this time, not in the site plan and not in the ZBA approval.
So Bill,
And-
was the ball field used at that time? For all that
Yes.
time, 2005, and it
Yes,
changed?
yes.
And the use never changed, it was always a ball field?
Yes.
And so, don't remember when I was out there, but it was a baseball field in the middle, it's like the diamond shape?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the remedy for the cleanup is either your interpretation or a use variance. Again, remind the board of the 2005, where they had the same issues effectively, neighborhood and hardship and all that, and found unanimously that they had met the standards. And tonight, I placed the criteria in my memo. I'd like to do it again. There's no change in the neighborhood. It's been there for 71 years. It's a well-established staple in our community. I can't imagine someone arguing that it's not a unique application. I think it is. The economic hardship is profound. If we had to remove all the vestiges of camp use, it would be very, very devastating to the camp, perhaps catastrophic. This is not a self-created hardship. My client relied on an approved site plan. The use was contained in that site plan. There was no deceptive intent. He used it, he maintained it, he created it. There's no environmental impact. I'm going to ask the director very briefly to speak to the issue, and again, I know you're sensitive to time.
All right,
so-
let me swear you in real quick. Name and address for the record.
William Yar, representing 825 Union Valley Road, Carmel, New York.
And you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you
Absolutely.
God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have
Thanks
at it.
for allowing me to be here. I find this fascinating, just on the record, off the record, I guess. Thank you. I've been the director for 6 years, had the pleasure of being here, and what I've found in my 6 years are how I want to do things correctly, the right way. I've seeken the approval of Mr. Carnazza many times to make sure we're doing things the right way, and that's how this all became to fruition. when we had the chance to acquire that 31 Blossom property so that I could expand the camp, not to add more additional children, but just to make it safer and make it an environment where I would feel more comfortable even sending my kids, which I do send my 2 kids. I wanted to make sure that we have this ability. We also have this interesting time of COVID, and I can tell you I'm still trying to rebound from that. Think of a summer camp where kids weren't even in school, not being allowed to function. In that summer of 2020, the main year, we were able to function, but in just a much smaller capacity, losing millions of dollars. And we're just trying to rebound from that. This area will not add additional kids. That's not what I'm looking for. We are allowed a set amount of kids. I want them to be in separate specific areas. I want to grow the younger children. I want them to continue to be able to be the best versions of themselves. But unfortunately, with these tough times, if unable to, I would call it catastrophic, similar to what he said, because of what we've already used and have done for this land. And I want to continue to do that and just help out others.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you all.
So if I could, I'm just going to make a couple of conclusory remarks. Number one, there's nothing dramatic here. This has been in existence since 2001, and it had the thumbprint of the town all over it. This is really an oversight more than anything else. Two, please remember what an integral part of the camp is to the town. There are so many young people affected by the good things this camp does. And third, I just want to say a use variance can hardly ever be called ministerial. And I don't want to undermine what we have before you. But this is something that's been in existence for a long, long time. And it's worked well. And, you know, it's through Mike's review that he said this never happened. And being on a site plan for the planning board and going before the zoning board on all these variances indicates that everybody believed that prerequisite was in, and it just wasn't. So with respect to the board, I do think it's somewhat ministerial. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, board members, any questions or comments?
You know, Bill, or perhaps William, you know, could you just show me on this overhead site plan exactly, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Already easement legalized and everything like that.
You need to use the microphone. Will.
Give him a mic.
Yeah,
Microphone.
hand him the,
Will,
use the handheld.
does this one?
Yes.
That should be on. That was on. Tap into it.
No,
Oh, it's not.
no.
No.
There we go.
There you go.
This whole area is the ball field. This area right here is a part of the ball field. This is a part of the zip deck where they would zip down into the easement already. This is all used for that ball field. Soccer goes back and forth this way.
This is in existence?
This is in existence. Yes, this is the director's corridors. Thank you, sir.
No further questions. All right, Phil, any?
If we were to grant the variance, is it going to change the way the camp operates? Is it going to make any real changes?
It's going to make us safer, to be honest with you. It's going to give me more land to be able to spread out the smaller kids from the larger kids, and that's what I'm really looking for.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Bill, just walk me through 2005. So they got a use variance. Because I'm leaning towards interpretation at this point, but they got a use variance for what? They got it for using the director's apartment, so what did that mean exactly? Because that was the business of the camp that was going there?
Yeah, can you speak to that more, better than I can? There,
I'm trying to, I want to dot the i's and cross the t's on what that use variance actually was.
well, I think because they considered it a non-conforming use, there were a lot of things that they applied for that they received.
Right.
The residence had been removed, had been changed from one lot to another, correct? Could you speak to that more elaborately?
From my understanding, 2005, a while ago, I wasn't part of it, but from my understanding is that there is an apartment complex with a garage, I believe it would have been 5, Blossom, and that is when the use variance for that was allowed at that point.
The
Correct, Mr.
caretaker's
Carnazzo?
cottage.
I think it was conditioned that they had to stay, maintain.
Yeah, there
that
was a
use.
condition on that. I saw
It
that.
had to be the caretaker that lived there, it couldn't be just rented.
Anybody who rented, and that's what happened, the original.
It had to be an affiliation to the
Yes, sir.
Right,
operations of
right.
the camp.
Yeah. But the easement that was currently on that 31 Blossom lot was there prior.
So what was 31 Blossom used for at that point?
At that point back then, that was actually the director's daughter's cottage. So it was actually in the family as well as the 5.
Yeah.
And that's how this all became a part of Kiwi in one way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of, on the paper, it looks like 2 separate versus 1, even though it was all in the same
Right.
family.
Because to me, that's already blurring the lines.
Right.
That's just the way I'm reading it. Okay. Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Solano, I just want to say that the requests are found in the findings of fact, and you
Yeah.
can see there are about 5 or 6 different things requested.
Well, it kicked in a whole bunch of area variances once the use variance kicked in. I
Right.
saw that, but I'm just trying to
Okay.
extrapolate that use variance.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
All right, Julia.
No questions.
All right, anybody in the public have any questions or comments on this application? Please come on up. All right, if I may, I failed to mention that there's a holdover request for Platinum Propane this evening, so if anybody's here for that application, it's not going to be heard tonight. I apologize for not mentioning that sooner, so I know we have a big crowd here tonight, so if anyone's here for that application, it will not be heard tonight.
Next month.
Probably next month, most likely.
You done with this?
Yeah. Thank you. Ma'am, come on up. Just speak into the microphone, state your name and address. You can turn that down.
Sure, I can move it down. Hi, how are you? Kaylin Jacobellis, 15 Ernhofer Drive.
Raise your hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, go
How
ahead.
are you? Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying a lot of that, because that was something that a lot of the local residents were concerned about when reading the notices. It was an expansion, and we were concerned about the expansion of the camp itself and the numbers. And I'm just going to read a comment on behalf of many of the neighbors in the area. I have lived in Mahopac for 48 years. During those years, my kids attended Kiwi Preschool, kindergarten, and camp. I live across the street from the camp, and my family has many wonderful memories there. I agree with you. It's a wonderful asset to the community. I'm here to support Kiwi and its operating, but concerned about any expansions or variances that may not enforce the pickup procedures that the camp already has. For 8 weeks out of the summer, I have cars up and down our road, parked in front of my house for 45 minutes a day, waiting for pickup. Buses, trucks, leaving their cars idling, which is causing a lot of problems with exhaust, and traffic. You can't go up and down both roads because there's parents that are waiting. They have to be the first to pick up to get down the road. It's dangerous if you're trying to make a turn from Munich onto Ernhoff, or if you're trying to get onto Union Valley. And that was our big concern, was with any kind of variances and expansions, how that would affect any type of numbers, and the traffic flow in general of what's going on in that area. It's dangerous. I have young drivers that are trying to get in and out of our house, and parents that aren't always friendly about it, that are on our road. We've called, the neighborhood has called Carmel PD several times about this over the years, numerous times a summer about this. It's fixed for a limited time, but then it continues to happen again. So our concern was how any of these variances and changes that were going to be made might affect the traffic flow of an already hazardous area in our neighborhood because of Kiwi. So that was our
Okay.
concern.
We respect your opinions and your thoughts, but it's not going to change the use.
No,
at
it's
this
not.
point,
That's
as
what
you
I'm understanding.
discovered this
That's what
evening.
I'm understanding. So I just
So-
want to make sure we're clear, we're all clear on that
I
in our
mean,
area
if there are
as well.
concerns like that, I would take it up maybe with the town board, or, if it's a police matter, if it's affecting someone or potential harm, but
well.
that's under the purview of this board that has,
Yeah, so that's why we
No
wanted to
way.
make sure we're clear on that, and you clarified that. Thank you very much.
You're
Have a
welcome.
great night.
The good thing is, I think this site plan is actually going to fix some of their
ma'am, I'm
circulation
sorry,
issues.
can you just fill out your name and address on top of that paper there? it's for being recorded. Sorry, Mike?
This site plan's gonna fix some of their circulation issues, I believe. I think that's what they're proposing, so I think Mr. Yar will tell you that.
To be neighborly, you guys might want to consider some of what was discussed this evening. And it's not a matter for here, but to take
Absolutely.
it into consideration.
It's appreciated too,
Feedback, you know?
especially from alumni, so thank you.
Sir, come on up. State your name and address for the record, and speak into the microphone, please.
Terrence McInerney, 39 Blossom Lane, Carmel, New York.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I agree 100% with the young lady said before me, and I just want to know, at 31 Blossom Lane, that is residential now, is that going to be removed and more structures for the camp be put on that?
I don't think that's the intention. It's really just to clean up an issue that
that's-
should have been tackled back in 2005 and
And it's
got
just,
missed.
I was going to bring in parking and traffic issues also, so that's it.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
I'll have the same comments, just, bring it to the town board or what have you. But thank you for your thoughts. Anybody else wish to be heard on this application? Ma'am?
No. It's the other one. You should note that.
My name's Ann Bignum, and I live on 15 Munich Road,
Okay.
which is just around the corner.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
My concern is, right now, if you convert that house from residential into the camp, right now, the plan is not to put more buildings and more stuff on the site. How do you prevent that from happening?
They'd have to go back through and put an application in for if it needs a variance, this board, as well as the planning board.
But would they need a variance if it's a building that they can just build and it's set back
It still has
the
to go
right-
through Mike's office for a
So
building
that-
permit, and if it requires site plan approval, it goes to the planning board. If it requires a variance, it comes to this board, or both.
Plus, John, wouldn't it be an expansion of a use variance, so then have to come back?
Well, Mike would pick
right?
that up as soon as they came in
Right.
for an application.
Okay,
Right.
it wouldn't necessarily mean that the camp will grow. I mean, fine to say that this gentleman here won't do that, but who's to say in 10 years from
The
now
next
he
person.
leaves and somebody else comes
Sure.
along?
Same
and puts it
situation.
there.
Yeah.
Okay, but now you're saying that, okay, Mike's gonna watch it as it comes. How do I know the next guy's gonna do the same thing as Mike is gonna do? That's my concern, because it is a residential lot,
If you see something being
correct?
built that didn't get a permit, that's
Right,
what neighbors are
But it
for.
is a residential lot, correct?
100%, yes.
Yes. So
Okay.
it's an expansion of a non-conforming use, so that's why it has to come back here.
Okay, so it's not that it's changing.
Correct.
It's not a commercial.
It's going to be the
use,
same,
not a
same
camp.
use that it is today and it was 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay, yeah, well, I know, but I know it was sold as a separate lot. That's my, you know what I'm saying? Like, this wasn't part of the camp. It was just that the owner had their lot. They sold the lot, sold the house, it foreclosed. So, yes, she allowed that ball field to be there because it was her camp.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern is that, people won't, I don't know, it just seems a little
Okay.
odd to me, that's all.
If you-
Somebody's house.
As
and
a
now
neighbor,
suddenly-
keep an eye on it, but if something comes up, it's got to go through the building department, not Mike. He
Okay, so the
may
whole-
not be here in a couple of years.
Yes.
So the whole the town board will take care of if we go to one of them for the parking. and the-
Well,
Gets reported to the building department
building
first.
department.
We'll look at it. If they put a shed up for the house, they're allowed, just like you would be allowed to.
Right, exactly.
They put a garage up for the house, they'd be allowed to, but if they do anything for the camp, it would be outside of what they'd be allowed to do.
Great. The
And they
answer
would
to my
need site
question.
plan approval.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Anybody else wish to be heard on this application only? I'll look for a motion to close the public
Motion to
hearing.
close.
Did you want to note the one email in opposition as well for the record? or
I
no?
think she spoke already.
Okay. No, she didn't, because I know the person. Barbara Johansson. So,
It's
yeah, but it's the same thing. So we did receive one additional email from Barbara Johansson in opposition of the application. Same reasons. I just want to make it as record.
Okay.
Motion to close.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, application number 3 for Glenacom. You know what, number 4, Platinum Propane, they requested a holdover, probably till next month. Do I have a motion?
Motion to hold.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Application number 3 for Glenacom, AKA Glenacoma Lake, for variation of section 156 -20, 156 62.0.2, 156 62.005, seeking a variance for permission to locate a public utility wireless telecommunications facility at the site. The property is located at on Walton Drive, Mahopac, New York, tax map 87.5-1-90. The code requires and allows 50 feet maximum in height for the pole. What's provided or requested is 140 feet in height, which would mean a variance of 90 feet. Also requested is a 28, or what's required is a 280-foot minimum setback for the tower, and 174 feet in the tower is being requested, which means a variance of 106 feet tower setback, variance to the nearest occupied residence. And then a fence is required of 4 or 6 feet in height. They're requesting an 8-foot fence, so a variance of 4 foot would be required for the whole piece. I just want to remind everybody that this applicant is in front of us tonight just for the height variance and the setbacks only. No planning board, any planning board concerns would be under the planning board's purview. We're here solely for area variances on this application. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Robert Gaudioso with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder on behalf of both applicants, Verizon Wireless and Homeland Towers.
Do you want to walk us through?
Yeah,
Yes, just wanted to make sure.
The application.
So yes, this is an application for one height variance, one setback variance, and one height variance for the fence. This is a proposed 140-foot wireless telecommunications facility that includes the 140-foot tower with the antennas and the related equipment at the base. The facility is located at the end of Walton Drive, and it's on a piece of property that is also adjacent to existing public utility lines. We submitted a number of items to you that I'd like just to take a few moments to walk through and explain what we've submitted, why we submitted it, and some of the items, the reasons why we submitted it to show the request for the variance. We submitted, obviously, all the required forms, including the application form signed by all the necessary parties. We submitted a structural certification letter from our engineer confirming that the facility will be in compliance with all structural requirements. We submitted a wetlands delineation report confirming that there are no wetland or wetland buffer impacts. We submitted the full environmental assessment form. We submitted a radio frequency exposure report. While this issue is federally preempted, provided we show compliance with the federal regulations, we submitted the report that shows that the facility will be 40 times below the federal standard. That's with not only Verizon Wireless, but 3 potential future co-locators. We submitted an FAA opinion report showing that there would be no FAA lighting or marking on the tower. We submitted a co-location commitment letter from Homeland Towers, which is required by your code. Your code requires that we build the facility for co-location and that we make it available. We submitted an alternative site report from Mr. Klaus Wimmer of Homeland Towers. Although it's a special permit criteria, it does somewhat factor in here. The code has a priority list, and what we did is we went through the priority and showed in Mr. Wimmer's report that there were no existing towers that would work for Verizon Wireless. There were no locations within non-residential zones that would work for Verizon Wireless. In fact, the closest zone that's commercial is 0.6 miles away at a much lower ground elevation. And we also looked at other alternative sites within the residential zone, and we showed why those were not feasible as well. We submitted a radio frequency justification report from a third-party engineer, PureCon Engineering, and they did a number of things. One, they actually did an actual signal test, so they put a temporary crane out on the property, they raised up a temporary antenna, and they did 2 things. They collected the existing coverage, so we have maps in the package that show what the existing coverage is at all the various frequency bands. They also did an analysis with the crane where they tested 140-foot height, 120-foot height, and a 100-foot height. And all of that information is in your report. And what it showed is even at 20 feet lower, there's a reduction of 40% of the coverage. And those are all detailed in the report that you have. They also looked at drop call rates and access failure rates and showed that not only are there gaps in coverage, but there's also a lack of capacity. Because of these gaps, there's access failure drops and there's drop calls, and we provided all of that data. Mr. Conroy, who prepared that report from PureCon, also confirmed that going higher would not help. There's a tremendous amount of topography in the area. So 140 feet is the minimum height for Verizon Wireless, which is why we're asking for that variance, but going higher would not actually increase the coverage because of the surrounding topography. We submitted letters from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding endangered and threatened species. We confirmed that we're restricted to cutting down any trees, and there's approximately 36 trees proposed to be removed between October 1st and March 31st. We submitted a DEC letter confirming all of the various threatened and endangered species and the wetland issues that I mentioned earlier. We submitted a full visual resource evaluation prepared by Saratoga Associates. That was based on the crane test. We also did computer modeling. That report has viewshed maps showing where the facility would be potentially visible from, and 39 different viewpoints that were studied with photographs and then photo renderings. As part of the planning board process, staff and the planning board has asked us to supplement that report with some additional visual renderings of the tower, which is currently designed as a slim monopole design with an alternative faux tree or monopine design, and we will be submitting that on Monday, and we'll copy this board as well. We submitted the full stormwater pollution prevention plan regarding all the erosion control measures, the MS4 acceptance form by the town engineer. We confirmed and have submitted a report from the State Historic Preservation Office that there's no effect on historic resources. We submitted a generator certification letter showing the type of generator that's proposed and the amount of noise. And we submitted the full site plan, which you have. Finally, and maybe most importantly, we submitted a report from Dewberry Engineers that, Mr. Chairman, I know you have a fat package. I made extra copies. If I could just hand this report out, it's an addition of what you already have. I think it'll help just focus you on what I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Sure. And not that we have time to read it, but.
No, it has a one-page map. It's already in your package.
It's a visual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The code variances that we're seeking start with the fence. So one of the code provisions is that we properly secure the facility. So we proposed an 8-foot fence. If the board feels the 8-foot is too high, we have no problem building a 4-foot fence. We think the 8-foot is more secure, and that's why we're asking for that variance. But we have no objection going down to 4 feet. The fence compound itself is set back approximately 108 feet from the property line. It's a 30-foot by 85-foot compound, so it's not a significant fence. It would be set back off the property, but we think from security purposes, it's a better option.
And what kind of equipment is there? We're talking about the generator, the.
So we have the generator.
Storage.
They have equipment cabinets, which are like small refrigerators. They're self-contained, they're locked, and they're monitored 24/7. So if anyone opened it, Verizon would know immediately at their operations center, and they would dispatch personnel.
You put in security cameras there too?
We do not have any security cameras. Quite frankly, we oftentimes get pushback with security cameras. People feel like that it's an invasion of privacy, particularly in this type of area. So we really don't have those types of problems with people breaking in or trying to vandalize our equipment. But the fence is just, we think, prudent, a deterrent, exactly. The second variance is the height variance, which I mentioned before. The basis for that is the PeerCon report. All of the data is in that report. It's, other than me summarizing, which is on page 15, the loss in coverage at the lower heights. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. The final variance is the setback variance. And the way the setback variance works is that we meet the setbacks to the property line. What we don't meet is that the code requires 2 times the height of the tower to the closest residence. So with a 140-foot tower, we would need 280 feet. We have 174 feet to 53 Walton Drive and 276 feet to 48 Walton Drive. And the question is, why don't we go further back on this rather large property in order to be able to meet the setback? And let me explain why.
At all, if you did that, I mean.
Well,
probably.
actually, we would, and I'll explain why. If you take a look at the map that's attached to the report that I just gave you. And I'm sorry, did I hand anyone the one that has highlighting on it? You have my highlighted map.
That's the
No?
one?
One of the highlighted ones? No, okay. So if you look at tower location number 1, just to orient you, that's the proposed location. Okay? And as you can see, when we come off the property, it already starts to drop down. And on the bottom left-hand corner, we have a little chart. So the tower is proposed to be at 750 base elevation, and that's the 140-foot tower. And the area of disturbance is just under 20,000 square feet, and the area of fill is just about 90,000 cubic feet. And the tree removal is 36 trees.
Whose rule is that?
I'm sorry?
Whose rule is that?
That's what we're proposing as part of this application. So by going in this location, by going in tower location number 1, which is what the application is before you, that's the amount of disturbance. Okay? And what we did is we showed on this map, there are two circles or half moon circles, dotted lines, just to the right of tower location number 2. Do you see that? See those dotted lines?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we did is we showed that would be the setback from the 2 closest residents. So if we move to that location, we would be 30 feet lower in ground elevation, which means we would have to raise the tower 30 feet, which would increase the setback 60 feet, so we would no longer meet the setback. Or we would have to increase the ground elevation by bringing in additional fill to increase it 20 or 30 feet base elevation. So when you look at the second line on the chart, in order to bring that base elevation up to 750 feet, which is the equivalent to where we are now, we would have 33,000 square feet of disturbance. And what we showed is we showed the actual area of disturbance with the darker dotted line on the plan that you have. We'd have to bring in 169,000 cubic feet of fill, and we'd be removing approximately 88 trees. And we would still, and if we didn't raise up the ground level, we would still have to then raise the height of the tower, which we wouldn't.
So more
we would still
environmental
need.
concern, more longer duration of work and trucks coming up and down the road.
Significantly more. So we did one other thing. So we said, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Could you just walk me through why you need to take down a lot more trees as opposed to a little more trees? Just
Sure.
looking at a road, just curious.
Sure. So can I come up and point to your map just because it's
That's
easier to show?
Yeah.
So if you look here, you can turn around. I'm okay upside down. This is the area of disturbance for the proposed facility.
Right.
With all the grading.
Right.
Because it drops pretty precipitously here.
Right.
Once it goes back to here.
Right.
It drops off much more. So this becomes the area of disturbance. And as you can see, all the trees in this area, to be able to grade this out, we have to disturb this entire area.
Understood. Gotcha.
Yeah. So the amount of disturbance, the area of disturbance, it's not just a little, it's a lot. And we would either have to.
Because it's a gradual grade that you're doing, so that's why you're taking the trees out to make sure the ground is level.
So we have to make sure everything's level when we build the pole.
Understood.
So the final thing we looked at is we said, okay, what if we went even further back on the property? And tower location number 3 is hypothetical, but we said, okay, what's the tallest tower we can build without FAA lighting? Because I think FAA lighting is a pretty solid no, you don't want to build a tower with FAA lighting. That's about 199 feet. Anything 200 and more typically requires FAA lighting. So we showed where a 199-foot tower would have to be, again, keeping in mind the double the height setback. So 398-foot setback for a 199-foot tower, right? So that would then put us at tower location number 3. And what would happen if we went at tower location number 3? Now it really starts to get crazy. Now the area of disturbance would be 42,000 square feet. The amount of fill to bring in and be able to construct it back there would be over 212,000 cubic feet. And we'd be taking out well over 160 trees, and that's an estimate because we didn't survey all the trees back in that location. So tower location number 3 is, I mean, we showed it as a hypothetical just to show you how things start to really exasperate the further you go back. Tower location number 2, while theoretically it could be put there and meet the setback, we still would have to raise the ground up 30 feet because it's 30 feet lower, and we would have to significantly increase the amount of tree removal, fill, and area of disturbance. So that's why we're asking for the variance for the setback. In addition to that, when when you look at our proposed location, we're able to come off Walton Drive. There's an existing, somewhat, I'll call it an access off of Walton Drive onto the property, and then we would come off of that with a pretty short access drive into where the facility would be. We then have space in that area to re-landscape that area, which is questions that the planning board has been looking at and has asked us to look at. So that's the argument about being located in a spot that requires a variance, but with the minimal amount of environmental impact. We can't go further to, I'll call the south, because there's wetlands in that location.
Yeah, I see that.
So we've looked at that. There's wetlands there, and those are pretty significant, so we can't go in that location. And to go further to the north, we would actually be going closer to residences. So on balance, we believe that given the fact that this is not your typical variance standard, this is a public utility standard, and I put that in my cover letter with all the criteria, we're asking for that setback variance in order to minimize the amount of disturbance.
So dive into a little bit of why this needs to be here. What kind of studies were done? You know, a lot of it's not mumbo jumbo, wrong term on my part, but a lot of technical stuff that maybe we wouldn't, or the public wouldn't normally understand.
Sure. So typically, applicants come in and they show you the maps that the computer models show. And we did that. That's part of your package. You have those maps. And what the maps show is that there are significant gaps in this area. Why is that? From a common sense standpoint, why is that? Well, it's really simple. There's no sites in this area because it's predominantly residential. Where are the sites that surround this area? Well, in Somers, one is at Heritage Hills, right smack in the middle of Heritage Hills. It's been there since the 90s, and it's providing service, I'd say, primarily to the east of this proposed site, north and south, both in Somers and in the town of Carmel. The next site to the west is the site over at the Baldwin Place Shopping Center. There's a pole back behind where the
Diner is.
I'm sorry?
The diner.
The diner, yeah.
Olympic diner?
No, so Verizon's not on that one. They're on the one that's at the
Stop and Shop.
at the Stop and Shop. It's technically behind the Creamery, the Goodwill, and it used to be Home Goods. That's where Verizon is, okay? The next one up is in Carmel. It's behind the diner, but Verizon's actually a little further north on Route 6, and they're on a rooftop. And all this is in your report, all these locations. So all the other sites are up and down Route 6. There's the old tower up on Crest Drive overlooking the lake, and then all the other towers or rooftops are along Route 6. And your code has a priority system. Your code says, go on existing towers first, go on existing structures that are in non-residential zones, go on existing structures that are off of Route 6, Route 52, and there's one or two other routes which aren't relevant to this area, and then go into residential zones. And what we did is we showed in the maps and the plans that we submitted, all of the sites on Route 6 are already there. All of that coverage is already there. The sites to the south in Somers are already there. They're at those two locations I already mentioned. There's nothing else in this area. So what does that do? That leaves a gap in the coverage, the actual signal. How did we show that? We did the computer propagation maps. But we also actually drove with specialized vehicles and collected the ambient signal, and we put a crane on this location to test the minimum height and how this location would actually work.
When did you do that?
So the report's dated December 7th, 2022. The crane test was done in sometime 2020. I forget the exact date. I think it was January 20th off the top of my head. What we did is also, we looked at all the surrounding sites. We provided a map of where all our potential future sites could possibly be in the next 2 to 5 years. That's all part of your package. Then we also did another thing to answer your question. So why do we need the site? Well, what we showed is that the surrounding sites, people that are using the service on those surrounding sites, they're either not able to make a call, an access failure, or they're making the call and it's dropping. And the reason that is because there's not sufficient service in the area, and that's what happens. So we looked at the computer modeling, we looked at we actually collected the actual signal data, and we looked at how the system is actually operating and the number of calls that are being dropped and the percentage of time that they're being dropped. And it's significant, and we have chart after chart of all the surrounding sites in there. So So the need is because there's a need for the site. The need for this location is because we believe there's no other less intrusive location. This is a large property next to existing power lines, which is right smack in the middle of where we need the site. Anything to the east starts getting into the topography that's to the east and not going to provide service back to the west. Anything further to the west is too close to our existing sites. And again, we showed maps showing the zoning map where the commercial areas are, the zoning map showing where all the existing facilities are, and when you look at it, you'll see we are literally right smack in the middle of that diagram.
And this property is owned by the condo association?
Correct.
And you guys would lease it for how many years?
We have a long-term lease. I'm not, typically it's tens and tens of years,
Yeah, duration.
and there are renewals.
Okay. Do you have anything further?
No, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. John, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions at this time, John.
Okay. Phil?
No questions, thank you.
Oh, I got questions. So, why is there a discrepancy on the map that Verizon markets this on their website versus what you're showing here? Because in Verizon's map, it doesn't show any dead spots in those areas, so how does that work? Just
Yeah,
walk
I'd have
me
to see
through
the
that.
map you're referring to, but typically, there's also an explanation on that map about that map doesn't guarantee coverage. So
Sure.
that's a map designed at certain levels to show where certain on-street coverage is, as opposed to our engineering maps that are done specifically to design the network. So they're really two different types of maps with two different types of purposes.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. I think the largest number you put forth in how many people would be impacted is 1,964 people. That sounds right. But how many of them are actually Verizon Wireless customers?
Well,
Typically, your market share is around 33%, so we're talking maybe about 700 people that are impacted by this? I'm trying to figure out
yeah. So
numbers here.
So I'll say two things to that. Number one, every person that lives in the area, and what we showed is we showed people that live in the area based on the census.
Sure.
That's not technically the number of people that are in the area.
Understood.
So if you travel, and it's a mobile device in general, there are people that travel through the
Right.
area. So that increases the number of people right there. Every potential person that lives in the area is a potential customer.
Sure.
What the FCC and the courts have specifically said is that the gap is the gap for basically all carriers. We don't have to show that other carriers don't have a gap. It's what our system gap is. And what the question is, are we being materially inhibited if we're prohibited from building a particular facility? And our argument is yes, we're trying to densify our network. We have a significant number of potential customers or customers in the area that not only live there, but that travel through there, including emergency services.
Sure.
A lot of emergency services use Verizon's system, and if they're coming for an emergency, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily within those 1,934 people that reside, based on the last census, within that area that we showed the
No,
gap.
understood. And you're really talking about two through streets. You're talking about Lovell and Union Valley. Everything else then is residential off streets. But yes. I
Well,
get what you're
what
saying.
we're really trying to do, though, is we're trying to not only provide people on the streets, we're trying to provide service, reliable service to people in their homes.
Of course.
And that has become much more prevalent over time, particularly since the pandemic. People are working from home.
Dropping
People
their
are using contact to their medical office from home. Students learning at a distance from home.
Oh, I have three of them.
All different types of emergency services, all different types of business uses, all different types of uses within the home that requires this type of service.
That's 5G, right?
No,
No?
no, that's 4G. So everything
he's
that we've
asking for
shown,
LTE.
everything that we've shown is 4G. Everything that we've shown in our maps is 4G.
Are you going to put a 5G transmitter on there as well?
I mean, typically, the carriers will add new generations of service. That's not what's currently being proposed as part of this
And
application.
that caught my eye, too. It's like, why only LTE? I was a little surprised by
Well, it's an evolution. So it went from 3G to, it went from 0G or no G, and they didn't have a name for it, to 1G, which they really didn't have a name for, to 2G to 3G. 4G, though, even with a 5G overlay, the carriers are still running 4G. So 5G doesn't necessarily replace 4G. It supplements it with greater bandwidth, lower latency, And that's usually typically an overlay, and there's many different ways. But that's not the basis for the need in this application.
Understood.
And the homeowners are using hardwired internet service, right? There's no wireless internet service, right?
Well, there's different ways to get internet service. So one way to get internet service is through cable or fiber, if you have access to that, and it could be very expensive. Another way is mobile, wireless. There's also fixed wireless, which is very similar. So in order to have service in your house, you either have to have a line that comes to your house, or you have to have it wirelessly. Having a Wi-Fi modem, though, is not the same as this. Having a Wi-Fi modem just means that you have some kind of cable line or some other line,
coming off
and
the
you're
main system.
repropagating that signal in an unsecure way that is not the same description of what we're proposing.
Right.
I hate to do this to you. Walk me through Table 3, the summary of KPI data.
Sure.
My hair went on fire, so I just needed to, I want to hear it.
He's
from
our
you.
resident IT guy, if you
If
haven't
you
picked
can't
up
tell.
on that.
No, that's not a problem. Just give me one moment, if I may, please.
Key Performance Indicator. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator, for the record.
That's right. And
KPI.
the two, and I believe you're talking on page
19.
19.
Yes.
So the two key performance indicators that we looked at were drop calls and access failure rates. Drop call is when you have a call and it drops. Access failure is when you're unable to access the system, and the computer system is able to analyze those. So what we looked at is we looked at all four bands that Verizon's operating in the area. And just to give you a sense, 700 megahertz and 850 megahertz, those are the two bands that signal goes the furthest.
Right.
It's the most robust signal. We
Right,
also
the more
included...
compressed the waves become, the less distance they can travel.
Correct. So what we showed, though, earlier in the report, and if I can just point that out, we showed the licenses that Verizon uses are obtained at auction from the FCC. Okay, so we're limited to what the FCC allows us to use. So what we showed on page 3 was that we showed the bandwidth of each of these bands. So
Yes.
something that jumps out when you look at it, 700 megahertz is limited to 10 megahertz bandwidth, whereas 2100 megahertz is double that at 20 megahertz. So we have much more bandwidth at 2100 than 700. The 700 goes further,
But you don't have as much capacity.
but we don't have as much capacity. So what happens is if you only had 700 and the site is propagating from Heritage Hills all the way north into Carmel, and too many people are using it in Carmel, then the people in Heritage Hills are dropping calls or it's being blocked. So you have to have, that's why it's called a cellular system. You have to have sites in each of the cells. So we looked at all four of the frequency bands. 700 and 850, they propagate very similarly, so we usually try and focus on 700. 1900 and 2100, they propagate very similarly and have very similar bandwidth. So we usually look at 700 as the one that goes the furthest, but the least amount of bandwidth, and we look at 2100 that doesn't go that far. So what's happening is, if you look at, for example, the Heritage Hill site, which is the first one, the 700 megahertz drop call rate, 100% of the time that it's being calculated, it's over the capacity of that
Yeah,
site.
you're oversubscribed.
And the reason that's happening is because the 700 is covering a much bigger area, so there are more people in that area. Whereas the 2100 is much closer at Heritage Hills, and it's got much more bandwidth, so the calls aren't dropping as often. So that's
And
why...
that's where I think I was going off. Like, I was trying to figure out how, knowing that the bandwidth, you know, that 700 covers much more ground, how are we not dropping calls to 2100? I'm going to let you answer. I think I know what the answer is now, but I want to hear from you.
So the answer is it's got much greater bandwidth, and it's covering a smaller number of people because it's covering a smaller area.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
Gotcha.
So that's why Mr. Conroy did it this way, because when I first saw the chart, I scratched my head, and then I asked him the same questions that are very similar to what you're asking. But what we also did is we included the charts in the back of the report.
Yes, which I have questions about as well.
So what those charts do is those charts show you the actual And here's the way it works. He looked at the surrounding sites, and each site typically has 3 sectors, meaning it covers in 1/3 of 360 degrees. He looked at the sector that was providing service to this area. If it's pointing to the south from Heritage Hills, it doesn't matter. It could be dropping calls all day. It doesn't impact the need for a site in this location. So what he did is he looked at a period of time from October through November in 2022.
Yep.
And he looked at what's typically done as a bouncing busy hour, and he looked at the percentage of drop calls, and he looked at it compared to the standard. And for example, on page 16 of 37, you can see right around that one period, well, it's always over the standard, which is 1%, but it goes up to almost 50% on a particular day where it's way over the standard.
Yeah, so, which leads me to, so there was a couple of graphs that were anomalous like that, where you were sitting around the standard, maybe above and maybe below, and then all of a sudden you had something.
Sure.
Like Heritage Hills, for example, Halloween seemed to be a really bad day for your network. Why? How does that get explained here?
It's usage. So what we did is we didn't cherry pick the data. We showed you all the data. We showed you all the surrounding sites, all the surrounding sectors that are facing in from those surrounding sites. We showed you a fair period of time. We showed you how it fluctuates over time, which is expected with a mobile network for some of the things we talked about before, that people come and go. People use their service more. There are anomalies sometimes when you're around, let's say, a religious organization that turns off their system on a particular day, and you see the usage drop. Like, we're not seeing any of those anomalies here. You might see an anomaly if, let's say there was a power outage, right? You'd see a big anomaly. Mr. Conroy checked for that. There was no anomalies related to that. So when you look at the data, it's very predictable to what the map showed, being that the 700's dropping like crazy.
Right.
It's spiking, but over the long term, that line starts to get more straight. Because we don't normalize, because we're only over a month. But it's consistently over the sites that are a problem, that would be expected to be a problem. It's consistently way over the standard, not a little over the standard, way over the standard, for a period of time, which is an indicator, a key performance indicator of what the maps already told us, is that there's not enough service signal in this area.
So who sets the 1% standard? Is it
It's
Verizon internally? Is that an industry standard?
It's an industry standard. All the carriers using that. And look, someone can quibble, should it be 1%, should it be 2%? The point is that it's always over that standard, and in some cases, it's way over that standard. And the problem is that that's the real world effect, is that calls are dropping. People aren't able to access the system. And you see that. You see that when you go
Tower's not going
homes.
to change that, though. Calls are still going to drop, right?
No, so what this tower is going to do is two things. It's going to provide the service in this area, and it's going to reduce the droppage
It's going to reduce
on
it,
the
but it's
surrounding
not going to make it
sites.
go away.
No, I mean,
It's
look,
still
you'll
gonna
never,
drop.
you'll never, when you walk into a building, you can be in Manhattan, you could have the greatest service in the world, you walk into the building, you go into the elevator shaft, your call drops. And the reason for that is because the signal is
So the
degraded.
need is just to make it less. It's
No, the
not
need is to
get rid of it.
So when you look at what he said, is specifically, he defined a gap. He looked at all the data, and he came up with an area that has deficient signal. And he's showing that this one tower is not going to cover the entire area. It never does, but it's going to cover a significant portion of it. It's going to solve that problem. That's why they're making the investment in doing this, and we've been at this for a long time. So they are solving the problem with that tower, but we're not solving every single gap, every place, in the town, the country, the state. It just never works that way. It's a system for that reason.
Was there any property in Somers, neighboring those Somers, that could have worked? That
No, I
was
mean,
available?
we already have the two sites to the south in Somers that I mentioned before, so those are the two corners here, and now we're working the way up. And if you look over the border in Somers, like, we're on a large, I believe it's 44.7 acre property. We're next to the power lines. Like, we're in a spot that we believe, out of all the other alternatives, would be the best location.
You don't have to worry about RF coming off the power lines?
No.
Okay. Two more questions.
Sure.
Number one, where was the rest of the spectrum for Yorktown Heights 2 Alpha? You only showed 700 megahertz, you didn't show the rest.
I don't know the answer to that.
I was just curious, because to me, that was an anomalous piece of data. It's like, Why did you do the entire spectrum everywhere else and not in Yorktown Heights to Alpha? Was it-
Can you tell me which site you're specifically referring to? Because I just don't know that one off the top of my head.
It's on page 15 only has.
Okay, I see what you're
700
talking about.
megahertz and nothing else. You don't go into a test of 850.
I'll have to ask Mr. Conroy.
I was just curious.
I don't know off the top of my head. He might
I'll
not
give you
have
the
had.
answer of none, you dropped no calls there, you were all in the service level, but that's fine. Last question. So in the antenna report, you talk about obviously 3 other vendors. There's not 3 other vendors anymore, it's really only 2.
No, there is
But you-
actually.
Who's the third now?
Dish.
Dish. Yeah, but they're a small player.
No, they're building out. They're a national player, and they have actually an obligation under the FCC to hit certain
Because of Dish?
benchmarks
Okay.
this year and next year, otherwise they lose their licenses. They actually did a deal when Sprint and T-Mobile merged, that they actually took
They
over.
filled the 4th slot?
Correct.
Because that's what I saw on the website.
Correct, yep. Yeah, so now
There's-
Dish,
nobody's running a
so
Sprint
now
SIM
Dish
card
is,
anymore.
yeah, they're actively building out as well.
All right. You answered all my data questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got, Julie, anything?
No questions.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the public, but I'm going to remind everyone, 3 minutes, please, because it'll be a long night. If every one of you folks wants to speak, it's going to be a very long night. So raise your hand who would like to be heard first, ma'am. Come on up. I'll remind everyone to speak clearly and concisely into the microphone. This is being
Also,
recorded
please
for
sign
minutes.
in.
And sign in.
After you speak, please sign in.
So state your name and address for the record, please.
Linda Shaw, 53 Walton Drive. My house is right at.
Raise your right hand.
At.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
3 minutes, please.
3 minutes. Do you have a copy of this?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we received that today.
Yeah.
I will read it real fast. My house is at 53 Walton Drive, right at the proposed cell tower site. Small house, very close to the road, closest to the site. There's no turnaround area for cars and trucks. I know you know all this already. I'll skip. There's no place to park vehicles without blocking my driveway. Garbage trucks, mailman, snow plows, sanding trucks, Amazon trucks, oil, propane delivery trucks. All of this come down the road. There's no place to turn around. They use my driveway. I've never blocked it, but I will have to if you do this construction. When they were doing all these tests in the area a few years ago, they parked across from my driveway, which makes it difficult for me to turn around, makes it difficult for the mailman and everybody else. I don't know how you're gonna deal with that.
Well, just say if someone's blocking your driveway, you know you can call the police?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I called the town, they didn't do anything about it. Anyway, I'm just making the point that if the condo wants this, they are getting the blood money. HOA fees will be reduced. So if they want it, there should be something done to make it closer to them. I would think something could be done. They talked about going in and going up the hill. I don't care how many tons of fill to build something up. Why should my house, my property, my quality of life be just thrown out? Am I going to be compensated for this? Do I still have to pay these insane taxes that I pay? Can Verizon buy my house?
That's not a question for this board. It's a question for
I mean,
Verizon.
I can't sell it. Do you think I could sell my house for what I'm assessed at?
I'm going to remind you, we're here just for the variances, so that's a
Right,
personal
okay, I'll
issue.
get- I
That's
will
something
get to
that
the variance.
you want to get there, you will
They're
talk to
seeking a
them.
90-foot variance for the tower height when 50 is the maximum. I think this is outrageous. They're seeking a 106 variance for the setback distance to my house, meaning the tower will be 106 feet too close to my house. And you think this is okay? Really? You would vote for this? You would approve this? Would you want to live this close to this site?
All right, that's 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
We have your letter. Thank you.
Yes.
Ma'am, come on up, please.
That
State your name and address for the record, please.
Patricia Gandolfo.
Swear, raise your right hand, please.
Yes,
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I don't know if you people have been around a long time. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Can you speak into the microphone, please? It's being recorded.
I said, I don't know,
Just check the switch on there.
I don't, am I talking?
No, there's a switch on there if it's not up.
Is it on?
Yeah, now it is.
Are you familiar with this? Is anybody on the town familiar with this? Okay, we spent,
Mahopac News?
yes? Well, you're not shaking your heads, I don't know.
Mahopac News, I'm familiar with. Is that
No,
what
are
you're
you,
referring to?
are you familiar with the fact that it was deemed illegal that our town board went behind everybody's back and was going to give a permit to have this built? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that. no.
Okay, well, that's what happened. So for 23 years, I have supported this town. I've paid my taxes, as have my neighbors. But the town board decided that illegally go behind our back, and Ken Schmidt and Frank Lombardi, who does live at Maple Hills and will be getting some type of compensation, we're going to give this board, we're going to give this permit to this corporation. Anyway, when we finally found out about this nightmare of a tower to be built, we needed to scramble for our legal counsel to have some representation. And now, as funny as this seems, and as depressing as it is, we were saved by bats. And the bats, you know, he mentioned before, the environmentalists, okay? So these bats come in, they're in the woods, and then they leave for a period of time, and that's when they want to come in and rip the trees out. If my house was a school or a daycare center, you and I would not be here tonight even discussing this. There would be protection. Where is my protection? Not in existence with this corporation, that's for sure. So for 2 years and $90,000 later, we were given a verdict of illegal to build on Walton Drive. This is not human. This is a corporation that has been speaking to you, that we've been listening to. They have no heart, they have no soul, they are greedy, they are self-serving. And they pretend that they supply a benefit, but do not be deceived. The benefit will be for them and for Maple Hills. We don't have drop calls. We don't have a dead zone. If I did, I would not have gotten rid of my landline 7 years ago. I don't have any problems. Nothing said by this corporation should be accepted as fact. They will lie, cheat, and steal to get what they desire. The lie is that we have bad service. The cheat is that if they were legitimate, they would have come to you and they would have come to the zoning board and they would have done it the right way. They didn't. They did a backdoor deal with our board members in this town. And the cheat and the steal. The steal is it will devalue our homes. That is a fact. And who will compensate us for that? No one.
That's 3 minutes, ma'am.
Well, just a minute, because I've waited a long time for this. There are many issues that need to be settled before this permit goes any further. Walton Drive should be off the table, beginning and end of it. Maple Hills has a road. I've listened to why they should not use their road. I don't care. This is money. They do not want to spend the money for the fill, and they don't care what they have to ruin. If they have to take down 100 trees, it's their woods. Why is it a good idea anyway to build a 140-foot tower in a wooded area that has been unkept? These things go on fire. It's right next to my house. The winds in this area have been intense over the last quite a few years. Trees come down. I don't know if anybody here has been to these properties, have you?
Yep.
Okay. Have you seen the condition of the woods from the Walton Drive side?
Yeah, I was there just the other day, yep.
Yes, what?
I was there the other day.
Okay,
And pertaining to what?
okay, so what is the one unkept property on Walton Drive? The one? Which
I'm sure there's
property?
many. I didn't spend a day there. I'd spent an
No,
hour,
no,
if
no. You
that.
drive down the street, you can't miss it. The trees are down.
Why don't you tell me?
It's Maple Hills.
Okay.
Nobody cares for that property. They care for the property as you come in off Kia-Ora. They never come up and take care of their property that's facing Walton Drive.
Okay. All right. Your time's up, man. I'm sorry. It's going to be a long night. There's a lot of the people want to speak. So we appreciate
It'll
your
make things
thoughts.
easier too, everyone, if you just stick to what, is before us.
Just
on
make
that.
your points quick and to the point, please. All right, next, anybody? Sir in the back, raise his hand first. Yes, you. You come on up, we'll start. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Gerard Hanrahan. I live at
Speak into the microphone, please. You can raise it up to your, or you can use that.
My name is Gerard Hanrahan.
Other way.
My name is Gerard Hanrahan. I live at 25 Summit Circle Drive.
Let me swear you in.
Mahopac.
Raise your hand, right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
I have no problem with drop service in that. And I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to speak. This is going on 3 years with us, and we spent a lot of money, and we're fighting it. And it's really not fair. It's caused a lot of emotional, financial distress, honest to God. Me and my wife were fighting coming here tonight. And over this 3 years, we spent a lot of money. I'm a carpenter. I'm a union carpenter. I'm not a professional. I'm not a salesman. I'm not a lawyer. I'm shaking up here tonight doing this. But it's about property, man. I'm going to retire in 3 months. We're just working people. We're just blue-collar people, I know it's not the end of the world. I don't want to make it sound like, but it's a picturesque community. People come to my house, it's like, it looks like Switzerland. And granted, we got power lines in that, and we got gas coming behind us, too. And the proposed cell tower isn't as close to, like, the lines, as they say. And it's not a fair fight. $160 billion, Verizon, Homeland. There's 71 acres on Maple Hills Estate. 71 acres, 75 houses. They put it at the furthest tip of their property. I can't see their houses. It's probably a mile from the nearest house. I don't know. I don't know if anyone's fact-checking tonight. We can't win with these guys in court. We beat them in court. And now we're back here. And I'm not going to slander anyone. These guys are doing their job. I understand that. I was at different community board meetings with my union, and, they're professionals. They're salespeople. They come in here to sell it, And we're not. And I just, I've seen 1 or 2 YouTubes with you guys before, and you just seem like decent people. And I just ask you to look at it open-minded and just, this is David and Goliath, man.
We do, believe me, we do.
No, I appreciate it. And, there's no problem with drop calls there. I swear to God, there's no problems. But they can
drop
say
calls all the
anything.
time.
And this is we were category, yeah, I'm wasting time. There was like 5 other locations. No one wanted to rent to these guys. That was mentioned at the last meeting. None of the residents would rent to them. Like, who would do that to the neighbor? If I put a fence up, I'd put it up on the nice side on your side. But the other location, and it was shot down before. I apologize.
No worries.
But, basically, it said, it doesn't fit in a residential community. That's what, I guess it was you guys at Croton Falls. It was shot down. Dixon Hills. Nobody wants this here, And I commend those people that fought against it,
Yep.
But there's a lot of stuff here that, I don't know. I disagree with a lot of things. It's a picturesque community. We got a little tea kettle pond down the street.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
It's beautiful. That cell tower, it doesn't belong in this. It's a dead-end street. Above it's a cul-de-sac. It doesn't belong there.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks a
you,
lot.
sir.
I hope
That's 3 minutes.
you know,
Thank you for your time.
Consider us. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And
Just-
we're not
ma'am.
paid to be here.
Just before everybody continues, I just want to clarify what this board's role is in this process and what we're allowed to do by law and what we're not allowed to do by law. What the applicant has in front of us is what's called an area variance. We have 5 criteria normally that we weigh them under. Under federal law, because he's a public utility, a lot of that goes out the window. So our hands are very, very limited in what we can and can't do. That's the law. We're subject to that law.
Well said.
I'm sorry, can I just say one more thing? The only reason, in my belief...
You gotta speak into the microphone.
The only reason, in my belief, that they want to build it 140, 160, is just business, so they could get more companies on it. It's just, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert,
Yeah,
and
we
I
got it.
visited that other cell tower up there. Could I show you a picture of it and the warnings to the workers? You guys know it anyway.
we got it, we
You
got
know,
it.
It's not a place where you want your kids climbing on.
Just sign your name and address on that piece of paper on the
Sir,
podium.
I did, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ma'am? State your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Dr. Denise Seppi,
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing
do.
but the truth. What's your address, please?
98 Kiora Boulevard, Mahopac.
Okay, thank you.
So he mentioned that there was an area north in Maple Hills that was a potential site, but it's too close to residences. That's quote unquote what he said this evening. Okay? Just so you know that, because you're saying that you have to make this thing happen, but you don't have to make it happen on Walton Drive, where my neighbors are. That's number one. Number two, the report ascertaining the amount of exposure and danger to the public was made not by an engineer, as per what he told us at the planning board meeting, but by a person. I have no idea what this person's credentials are, but I don't believe necessarily their report, because that's their guy making their report about the effect on my neighbors.
Okay.
Next point is that the number of megahertz, gigahertz from the non-ionizing radiation which this tower will emit is exponentially increases with each device they put on for each company that puts the device on top of the pole. It's been shown that tissues heat up, neurological tissues, muscle tissues, people have sleeping disorders, headaches, muscle pain from these devices. So, number one, they want to make it closer to my neighbors that I care about. That's number one. And number two, the intensity is going to increase over time because there's going to be more companies coming to put devices on that tower. Again, my neighbors have to suffer again. What I'm saying is, if you have any heart at all, if you're a Catholic Christian, love thy neighbor. You shouldn't be able to go to sleep tonight if you make this thing happen across the street from my neighbors and on their property. You shouldn't be able to go to sleep tonight because God says you have to love your neighbor and care for your neighbor. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, who else wishes to be heard, sir, with the glasses raised?
Yeah, Denise, sign in.
Excuse me?
No, I'm saying Denise, sign in.
Yes.
Hi.
Sure.
We'll swear him now.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
Yeah. All right, so just speak clearly into the podium, state your name and address for the record.
And sir, if you're just going to read what you gave us, we could put
No.
this in the record
No,
and,
no.
okay, thank you.
Hi, my name
Thanks,
is
Bill.
Joseph Armisto. My address is 40 Walton Drive. I'm a homeowner.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I've been involved with this for a while, since I found out about the cell tower being put up. Initially, nobody was even notified that this tower was going up. The town never notified, as the woman before me spoke. That property that they're building on was supposed to be forever green, according to the way we allowed the condominiums in there.
I think the mic's off.
Oh, did it die?
The condominiums
There you go.
were allowed initially in that property. That was granted rezoning, and the rest was granted for evergreen. This somehow disappeared. All this information and the original variance that was given to the condominiums is gone. I can't find it. I don't have a copy of it. Going on, this cell tower that's going to be put up, the information that I gave was taken off the internet, the damages that it could cause by the radio frequencies, and apparently you have a quarter, the way that reads, you have to be at least a quarter mile away from that tower not to be affected. This is all very easy information on the internet. These people, I rent my property at this point. I'm here to help them. It's just not safe to live there. According to okay, the foundation of a zoning code is to police the power of government which exists to protect the health and the safety of the community, guard against loss of property value. With this cell tower, is doing exactly that. You're losing the value of your property, and you're going to hurt the health of these people. And what they're trying to say here is, yeah, they're telling you all this data. We're here basically to say the height. I don't see, they weren't talking about the height. They went off key 100%. No, I haven't spoken in a long time. You can tell. I'd just like to say, granting the variance is not right. They just want to save money by not putting it away in a different place, which is not fair to all my neighbors. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Just write your name and address on that piece of paper. Anyone else wish to be heard? Ma'am? Sure.
Sure.
State your name and address for the record, please.
It should be on. No.
Push it up.
There we go. Jennifer McCormick, 43 Walton Drive.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
So this is the property that we're looking at. This is the location of, they want to put the tower right here. Here's Linda's house. Here's PJ's house. The requests are excessive. They're almost triple the height of the tower that's allowed for a residential neighborhood. The distance from the nearest home is excessively close. It's intrusive. It will definitely affect the marketability of our homes. And, sorry, I'm a little nervous, but
It's okay, take your time.
we don't have drop calls in our neighborhood. I drive into Somers, I drive to Brewster Ice Arena, to the high school. We never have any drop calls in those areas.
And you have Verizon, is your service?
I have T-Mobile, but I have other people that I've spoken to, all of them say none of the calls are dropping.
Who are Verizon users?
Yes, absolutely, my brother. The reports that were provided were 3 years old, showing these drop calls. Since those reports were done, Dixon property went up, that cell tower went up. On their map, they showed 2 proposed towers that were approved. I'm not sure if those have gone out, North Salem and one in Mahopac. So the information provided is old and not useful. I just don't feel that they've provided proof that this is a necessity for such a intrusive tower in our backyard, like right on top of our homes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just-
I'm her husband, Todd. I thought me just being near her might relax her a little.
Yep, we got it.
Good job.
Good man, you're a good man.
Yeah.
Sir?
We swear.
Yeah, just state your name and address again.
Todd McCormack, 43 Walton Drive.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think everyone's made the facts really clear. You know, just from emotional side of things, from the heart, I mean, I'm glad to hear everyone went to the site on this board. You actually, everyone was at that location? I mean, pictures don't really, you know, say, you know, can't always just, you know, show the impact as well as being there. So I think, honestly, you know, if you're there, you really see that there's absolutely no way that, you know, that this is something that's feasible. That should be that close to a home, you know what I mean? Like, and it's true. I mean, it's pretty clear that they just want that site because it's a lower cost for the company, you know what I mean? So, I mean, none of these sites, and the location A compared to location B is so close. You know what I mean? They're talking about, you know, all this environmental impact and stuff like that. You know, that's not what their concern is, you know what I mean? It's just cost, you know? It's because the location B is very close to the first location. The balloon test, we were never notified, never witnessed it. I'm sure you're all aware of that because the way this whole process has gone, you know, it was, all that, I think, was attempted during COVID, so, you know, we were never notified.
Yeah, that's more of a planning board side,
okay.
just so you know. That's
In regards to the variances, they're all, like my wife said, they're all extreme. I mean, like, you know, you could almost see it like if it was, just pretty far away, but it's only a few feet, they're extreme. I had to get like, you know, I needed for the front of my house, I had to get a permit for the 4-foot fence in front of my house. They want double that. I know you said they were compromised on that, but, and then, you know, the property, like it was already said, you know, it's on the very edge of their property, you know? And then, you know, one other thing I just want to mention, the generators, I believe they said there was going to be a generator there. I mean, I remember when we had a power outage, you know, and everyone was running the generators in the neighborhood for.
Which
power.
one?
Yeah, really, yeah, all of them.
Right.
And extremely loud. I mean, you know, when you have several generators, you know, running at the same time, it's loud. And, you know, so I can imagine the size of the generator. I don't know if that was stated, what size generator. It is.
Yeah, it's in the package.
But I mean, I'm sure it'd be a lot bigger than the 85, you know, K I have in my house. So it would be crazy, you know, noise pollution, you know. And then the home value, obviously, you know, I mean, that's obviously, it would have a huge impact on our houses. You know, I mean, that's clear. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. She signed you in. She signed you in.
Hello. Name and address for the record.
Rob Cavallaro, 49 Walton Drive, Mahopac, New York, 10541.
Other side, right hand.
I'm sorry.
The other right.
The other right hand.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I
So
do.
help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you for meeting with us tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been a long while. You know, we've been waiting for this opportunity for 2 years now. We've been fighting legal battles against Homeland Towers for the last 2 years. It's been rough. It's been expensive. It's been emotionally draining. There's a couple of points I'd like to make, and I've heard Homeland Towers points. I've heard our planning board speak. I've heard our zoning board speak. There's a couple of points here that nobody's really touched on yet, and the fact is that Walton Drive is a very small street. It is very narrow. When the garbage trucks come, they come in, and they have to back out of the street, okay? I would love to know if somebody could tell me where 3 to 6 months of heavy machinery is going to be coming down our tight, dead-end street. What are they going to do? They're going to pop U-turns on my front lawn while my 2 little girls, 7 and 4, are going to be playing out front? I moved to this town 7 years ago. My kids attend the public schools here. They're all over my property playing, okay? I don't feel safe anymore. I moved on a dead-end street for a reason, for safety, for my children, on a dead-end street, okay? The fact that we're going to have 3 to 6 months of heavy construction coming down through our neighborhood, it doesn't have to just be Walton Drive. It'll be Kia Aura, it'll be Mountain View, it'll be Summit Circle, it'll be everywhere in our neighborhood. The fact is, nobody has explained to me yet how this heavy industrial commercial machinery is going to be coming down our street and turning around. We're talking tractor trailers, we're talking cranes, we're talking concrete trucks. How is this going to happen? How is this going to happen without them possibly turning around on our front lawns? Okay? So that's just some food for thought. Here's another point I'd like to make. We started this battle in July of 2020. Okay? The big topic back then was Croton Falls, Croton Falls, Croton Falls, that tower. The service was so terrible at Croton Falls that Homeland needed to put a tower there. And what happened? It got denied, right? They went to court, and then the town of Carmel and Homeland Towers, they settled in federal court. Because the attorneys for Homeland Towers, all they know how to do is fight in federal court. As soon as you slap them with municipal and state, they failed miserably. Because we won every argument for the last 2 years, okay? So Croton Falls Road, did service magically appear there? Because I haven't heard one single thing about dropped calls at Croton Falls Road, where the original tower was supposed to go, right? It was supposed to go to Croton Falls Road. But now all of a sudden we have service there. Do we? I don't think so. There's no towers there yet. Now, isn't that closer for emergency services to get closer to the hospital, right? Isn't that a much more critical area? My next point, I've been here 7 years. I conduct my work from my home. I am in my house 24 hours a day. I have Verizon Wireless, ironically enough. I do not have a landline, like most people in this room. And I have never, ever, and I just swore under oath, I have never had a dropped call, regardless of what Homeland Towers counselors are saying, okay? I think it is absolutely not correct what they're saying. This is about money. I've had several encounters with Manny Vicente, CEO of Homeland Towers, fed me a bunch of BS, so to speak, and I've never believed a single thing he said. Now we're at this point where we've all had an opportunity to speak so that you guys can hear what we're trying to say. This is not needed on Walton Drive. It absolutely is not, okay? Maple Hill Estates, they pushed this tower 70 acres across their way to the absolute furthest corner of their property that abuts P.J. Gandolfo's house. I'm across the street, 80 feet from the site. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am? Thanks for keeping time. That's why we're keeping it 3 minutes.
Hello.
Good evening.
Is it
It should be on.
Sounded like it.
I think up is on.
Push up.
Hey, Vinny.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great.
State your name and address for the
Yes.
record,
My name is Rosemary Lee, and my family is at 43 Walton Drive.
and raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is it off?
What position is on, Vinny? Up towards the top of it?
Okay, is it on now?
Up. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you.
Of course.
I think, as you've heard, I am speaking for my family at 43 Walton.
Just speak
and
into the
also-
microphone.
Also for these neighbors who are here. I think, in addition to all of the facts you're hearing, the emotion is definitely very strong. This neighborhood has been devastated by this whole situation. So we know that you do have power as a zoning board. I know that your hands are tied in some areas, but you do have the right to make the decision in the face of this particular variance, which is extreme, even based on the 4 criteria that you have. And we believe that we have stated that those criteria have been met, that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by another means, that the variance will not create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to the properties. The variance is not substantial, it is substantial, and that it will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. We think that this is absolutely the case in this situation. So what impacts are happening on the neighborhood residents? This is the area in question. This is the border of the house that is as close as you can. Those trees are estimated about 60 to 70 feet in height. If you've been there, you've seen this. Now, take double the height of those trees as you were standing there, and that is going up to 140 feet. In addition, this entire forest is going to be clear-cut. So this is a quiet neighborhood. The neighborhood, as was said before, it's a middle-income neighborhood. Children have been raised there. A lot of the residents are there for 20 to 40 years. Plus, we have these great new families. So it's always had a neighborhood character. Your master plan and your code in the town always mentions the neighborhood character and preserving residential areas and communities. Why? Because they are the lifeblood of your community. This is a dead-end street with very little outside traffic. So the view shed from this commercial industrial project will be destroyed as the applicant plans to clear cut something like 50 trees by the end. They said 30. And these are adjoining the neighborhood property. Very close proximity to these homes. This is a GIS plot of the homes that are in the area. This is 43, where my family is. But you can see it with this site that they are planning on, how close it is to all of these homes, and all the homes above here, up on Summit and Mountain View Drive as well. So this is proximity that these houses have so close to this planned tower. Variances in height, setbacks, and fencing clearly are not permitted under the zoning regulations, which are protective of residential communities and neighborhood character. The project located is the lowest priority on the existing town recommendations. It's already stated that the Carmel zoning and siting regulations support the protective of residential neighborhoods and the character of the community. The property values in the community has already been mentioned. We have estimates of up to $100,000 lost per home. The massive commercial industrial facility does not meet the standards for the least intrusive siting, and the applicant has not done due diligence to offer an alternative or locate an alternate site. The documents in this case are 3 years old. The project will bring commercial lighting, generator, long months of construction vehicles, clear cutting and removal of the possibly 50 trees, soil and foundation work, and traffic. This is not a straightforward variance request, such as might be granted in the case of a setback coverage or a deck or a pool. It's a massive commercial project causing long-term disruption and destruction of the community character of this residential neighborhood, and it's substantial by any measure. It does not comply with the zoning code, and it will inflict on nearby properties severe adverse effects. And the planning board has just begun to review this project, and already many questions have been raised which have to be addressed. The forested area with attending benefits in air quality, moderation of temperatures, absorption of water, and flood prevention. As you've seen up the hill, trees do absorb water. They'll be severely impacted, and the visibility of a complex tower of 140 feet far above the height restrictions.
Ma'am, can I ask you to get close to finalizing your past
Sure,
3 minutes?
okay. We believe the services will benefit the town of Summers, and likely more than the Carmel Mahopac area, because it's exactly on the border. You can see the elevations here, and this tower is sited very, very close to Summers. In view of the considerable personal and financial, emotional impact, we ask the members of the zoning board to vote no on this variance request. Also, I will provide you, I'm not going to take your time up, but we've summarized a lot of the beneficial effects, the ecosystem benefits of the trees, the 50 trees that will come down on this property if this project is approved. Flooding is a big concern, and it's amazing, astounding how much water absorption the soil and the forested area will take in. Up to 50 gallons, hundreds of gallons of water are absorbed by that property now. That they're going to destroy, they're going to remove all the soil, and they're going to put concrete down there. No stormwater is ever going to absorb the kind of activity that's happening with the trees and the soil. So,
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, I appreciate the time to talk.
Just
I'm
write
going to
your
leave some
name and
copies of
address
this with you.
on that. Yeah, if you could.
Yes, just leave them with us.
One other thing I
No,
want to
ma'am,
say.
come on. Give us what you have.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
sir, in the back?
All right, there's 6 copies for each
We'll hand
person.
them out.
There are some cases there that you have probably seen, but I'm going to provide them to you anyway about the powers that you have in this case.
Sir, state your name and address for the record, please.
Mics should be on. It should never have been off.
Up position.
Craig Vieira, 26 Walton Drive.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
What I wanted to bring up was, I know a lot of people here mentioned that, our neighborhood doesn't have any issues with Verizon cell coverage, no drop calls, and that's because based on what I could find off the internet using mainly cellmapper.net, it's not meant to improve our coverage. It's meant, the gap in the coverage is Lake Lickendale. That's what they're looking to improve in Westchester County. The gap between West Level and us. That's why the tower's on that side of the mountain, on that side of the hill, facing that way. So it's not meant for the town of Carmel. The other thing I wanted to mention too was, it was brought up a couple of times and planted the seed that, this site was partially selected because of the power lines that already exist back there. True, there are power lines back there. Those towers are 70 feet tall, 400 to 500 feet away. Not 140 feet, 100 feet away. So I just want to bring that up, that those are much further back, much shorter. Also, too, as pointed out, the only property they could find was approved and accepted by a board of directors for a townhouse location on the furthest property the furthest away from their own houses. And those board of directors, I don't even know if they live in that community. I don't know if that's a requirement. But those are the ones that voted to approve.
I would think so
on that
typically,
corner.
but-
Some don't. I couldn't find that information. But, and lastly, I just want to, point out that this could be opening Pandora's box. I'm hoping that, that everyone's not so short-sighted in this decision to grant these variances. Because this location, as it stands today, is a priority 5 location. Is the least desirable location in our town. If this tower is approved, our town code dictates that it becomes a priority 2 location. So any and all future expansion will be pointed to this location. And anything that wants to be built in the future will go to this location. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sir, sign your name and address, sir,
Sir,
on the
sir.
piece of paper. Ma'am, I think you were first. We'll get you next, sir. State your name and address, speak into the microphone.
She's ready.
You've been listening.
Don't turn it off.
Don't,
touch
leave it
the
up.
buttons.
But speak into it, yes.
Hello, I am Annette Vermito, and I live on Lakeview Court, which is on the lake.
All right, raise your right hand. The switch should be up towards the top of the microphone. Is it on there?
Just tap it
Yes,
up.
it is.
Can you tap it
Tap
up?
you
on
hear
it.
me?
Tap on top of it.
Real quick.
Yeah, that's on.
There it goes.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. I've been living here over 40 years. That's all I'll say right now. This is a very emotional project for the residents of the Tea Kettle Spout area. Clearly,
Ma'am, just speak into the microphone, please.
Clearly, it's a win-win for Homeland Towers and Verizon's. They drive additional revenue, and they'll have other carriers. They already have 2 to piggyback on this tower, and there will be more. So it's a win-win for Homeland Towers. It's also a win for Maple Hill residents and also the town of Carmel, because they will collect additional funding for this tower. So they're in a good field. The construction costs will be minimal. We all know that is an excellent case when you're presenting a business case to your employer, the carrier. Okay, so I just spoke about all the pros for the people, these companies, and Maple Hills residents, and also the town. Okay, so now we're sitting here with the cons. It's disgraceful that we are even considering this project in a residential area. Are there any other cell towers in Mahopac that are on a residential area? You spoke about all the ones on Route 6, right? The tower was supposed to go on Croton Falls Road, and now it's all the way there in Mahopac. And let's face it, this is a tower to support mostly the Somers residents. This is not for Mahopac. I spoke to a board member of Maple Hills. She says, I don't get any drop calls. She says, I'm going, and I have AT&T. I'm sitting down on the lake, right? I don't have any drop calls. So everything that people are saying, there is really a valid point, and you need to look into it. Okay. So this is very dangerous to install this in a residential area where there are children, developing children, and there is a tremendous amount of emissions because the tower exceeds all the FCC regulations as far as the height, and we're here opposing 3 variances that are presented to this board. I asked you, would any one of you want this in your neighborhood? Would you like that for your family, your children that you're raising? So, I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's the facts. It shouldn't be in a residential area. The children are at danger. The adults are at danger. The emissions were spoken about. It's so wrong on so many levels.
May I make your final points, please? Past 3 minutes.
That's 3 minutes? Give me another minute.
Time flies.
For age. Okay. They talk about there's no known emissions. There's no studies to prove it. But there's people with cancer clusters all over the country. Also, I'd like to point out that Homeland Towers in Mount Kisco, they wanted to put a tower in Leonard Park. Well, it seems that they were having a difficult time. Homeland Towers ditched that because there's a daycare nursery right there where Carmel Medical Center is, and it's right near Leonard Park. So they found another location. Another fact I'd just like to mention. Okay. Homeland Towers told us 2 weeks ago that they pursued other options. They simply said to us at that meeting in front of the building, no, zoning?
Planning board.
Planning, yeah, it was planning. They simply said to us, nobody returned their phone calls when they pursued that. That doesn't sound very professional. That doesn't convince me they made an effort to find another location. They want that location because it will save money. They can increase. They think it's hidden. And as a fact, Maple Hill residents and the town and their board didn't know about. They submitted an application, and they didn't know that it was approved until they read it in the paper. I have a friend who's on the board, and I said, how did that happen? And I wonder, did the town ask for their meeting minutes? Did that ever occur to anybody? How many people approved it? Was it the majority of the residents? Was it just the board members? Because the way I understand it, the people in Maple Grove, they don't even go to the meetings.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Just sign your name, please.
That would go on
Sir.
the planning anyway. That doesn't come here.
Good evening, Brian Miller, 89 Kia Ora Boulevard, Mahopac, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I also have no cell phone problems whatsoever. I have Verizon, my wife has Verizon. We've lived in our house for going on 13 years. Never once had a dropped call. My wife is on call 24 hours at times, 2-3 weeks at a time. Gets calls middle of the night, during the day, whenever, never had a dropped call. Our cell service is so good that we've got rid of our house phone, and when I work from home in my basement, I actually turn my Wi-Fi off my phone because my cell phone service is better than my Wi-Fi. Maybe I need a new router, but that's just how good the Verizon service is in the area. As Craig said earlier, and has been pointed out, that this tower is not to benefit Mahopac. It's not to benefit Carmel. It is solely to benefit Somers and Lake Lincolndale. They put it in their packet that they provided to you in several forms. We're looking at page 10 of their proposal. The coverage objective is in Somers, Lake Lincolndale. If we go to the current coverage in Mahopac, it's all green. The dead area, Somers, Lake Lincolndale. If we look at their coverage objective, the Glenacom, page 28 of 37, coverage objective. This is their objective, and they're telling you, our objective is Somers, Lake Lincolndale, not Mahopac. So when you talk about being a good neighbor, I don't know any of my neighbors here, maybe one or two, but I'm here to help my neighbors. Just like Mr. Gaudioso is here to help his neighbors in Somers. He doesn't tell you that he lives in Somers and he would benefit himself.
Yeah, let's keep it personal. Sir.
Relax, come on.
We're doing good here.
Let's not keep it personal, okay?
But they made this personal by putting it in a neighborhood, trying to put a cell phone tower in a residential neighborhood. For perspective, if you look at these windows, and I know from where you're sitting, there's a brick wall, but if you look at these windows, there's a cell phone tower maybe 100 feet away, cleverly disguised as a flagpole. This tower that they want to put here on Walton Drive is taller than that tower. It's not disguised as a flagpole. Taller, and it's going to have these branches sticking out of whatever devices, equipment they use for cell phone towers. They're not being a good neighbor. They want the cheapest project, the cheapest land they could get so Somers can have their cell phone service on our backs.
Okay.
And I ask you, do you represent Somers or do you represent us here in Mahopac when you make this vote? That's something you have to ask yourself as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, anybody else wish to be heard? All right, going once, going twice? Sure. All right, at this point, yeah, Mr. Gaudioso, you want to come up and just respond to any of the comments, and this will be the last?
3 minutes.
Since you're the applicant, we'll give you 4 minutes. No.
Thank you. I'll keep it real quick. There were some questions about stormwater runoff and things of that nature. We submitted the stormwater pollution prevention plan that was actually signed off on by the town engineer. There was a comment about Leonard Park. Actually, Homeland Towers wants to go with the private property. It was the village mayor that wanted us to investigate Leonard Park. We haven't backed away from Leonard Park. That's still an ongoing process. Not relevant here today, but just to correct the record on that statement. Regarding the construction, the way the construction will work, it's not 3 to 6 months worth of construction. It's a short period of days spread out over a month or two. So what happens is they first put in the access drive, they clear and grub, they put in the access drive. All of the work then will be done on the property. There's plenty of room in that location. If you look at the plans, we have a turnaround area, we have an area to access it. Then they put in the foundation, so that takes a few days, but then the foundation has to set, so then there's no work going on. They stack the pole, that's done in 1 day, and then there's the related equipment that's put in at the base. So it's a number of days over about a month or two, depending on the weather, but it's not 3 to 6 months worth of heavy construction.
Sir?
Sir, you had your chance.
There was a question about the RF exposure report, the person's qualifications. It's actually attached to the RF exposure report. It's the chief technology officer of the company. All of his qualifications are attached, and I think they speak for themselves. The pole out here is a good point. It's right within distance of this building. Obviously, the DPW, the multifamily house that's right on the corner, and other residences. There are other poles within residential areas in Somers, outside of Somers, in and around the town of Carmel. It's very common because that's where the service need is. The service need, if you look at the report, there is a significant gap within the town of Carmel. There's different frequency bands. One of the bands is in Somers, but there are other areas within Carmel that's shown in the report clearly for the Carmel area. These facilities, they don't know where the municipal or the county boundary is. There are sites in Somers that provide coverage into Carmel and vice versa, and that's just the nature of the facilities and the technology. And then finally, the area of where there is adequate service is in the report, and it happens to be in the high areas, some of the high roads in the area. So just because someone has service at their house doesn't mean that there's not gaps in the surrounding areas, which again, we showed in Mr. Conroy's PeerCon report. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Can I ask just one question? The fence, what is this fence going to look like? What is the proposed fence?
So we can do any type of fence. We, I believe, proposed a chain link fence. We could put slats in it. We could make it a board-on-board wood fence. We have no preference on that, whatever the preference of the
So
board
if we were
would
to
be.
condition it height-wise and type of fence, that would be amenable to
That would be
the
amenable
applicant?
to us, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
What about the generator? I know it was on
There's
the
a
plan.
there's a
It's a
50K
diesel.
watt generator.
Yeah, because that was the
and-
part that was missing.
Yeah, it's actually in the letter. It's in the first sentence, says 50 kW, but it gives the amount. So the period of time at night is 65 decibels. We're at 52 decibels. We will only service it regularly
8 a.m.
during
to
the
6
week,
p.m.
and that's a 52 decibel at the site of the generator.
Is that powered by diesel or propane?
Yes, it's a diesel.
Yeah, we have a diesel.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this point, there's no further public input or response. Board members, any other questions in light of what we've heard for both sides? No, it's closed, sorry. So,
Motion to close.
so I'll look for a motion to close the hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, there's no further input. It's closed, so if you have a problem with it, you can take it outside.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you all. All right, I think in light of testimony that we heard from both sides of this, it's my opinion that we're not going to vote on this tonight, but, Greg, do you want to add any comments to what our thought are?
You have the 60 days from the close of the public hearing to
Right.
render a decision. It's got to be on an agenda for further discussion and a vote within that timeframe.
So Dawn will put this on the agenda for next month, if so be it, okay? So if you all want to stick around for the other cases as we adjudicate, you're welcome to. If not, you
And
all
when
have a
we're
good
back
night.
on the agenda, there'll be no more discussion, right, Greg?
That's it. The
Close the public
Just for the vote.
public hearing's
Vote is
closed.
done. It's discussion and vote at that point.
All right, application number 1. Where am I?
Rocca.
I lost my agenda.
Here you go.
Rocca. I'll look for a motion.
Motion to grant.
Any, do I have a second?
Seconded.
So moved,
Any
yeah.
discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's granted. Application number 2, Kiwi Country Day Camp. I'll look for, why don't we just wait a little bit?
Yeah, we'll just wait.
Okay.
Wait a little bit.
We're holding a second.
I want to thank everybody for being courteous for for everything we've done here, but we need to work, so if you could bring it outside, that'd be great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night, get home safe.
sound like something on Saturday Night Live.
That'd be great.
Yeah, you gotta be fine.
Number 2.
All right, number 2, Kiwi Country Day Camp. I'll look for interpretation on the, or
A
decision on the
motion,
interpretation.
a motion that the interpretation that the property has town, that the property Town of Carmel approval to permit 2 principal uses on 1 lot.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that because
I'm sorry, I'll just read it.
he just
In
read.
this case, the applicant seeks interpretation that the property has Town of Carmel approval to permit 2 principal uses on 1 lot. That's what it says as, should we just have an interpretation that this property has 2 principal uses?
I think what Mr. Schilling was trying to, sorry,
I know, we got buried in cell phone.
Your interpretation was
Thank you, appreciate you being here tonight.
the previous
You never know.
Thanks,
based upon the previous approvals, one of which was issued apparently erroneously, that his client had vested rights in the 2 principal uses. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So he was looking for that
And that's that
interpretation.
interpretation that he's looking
Correct.
for first. And if that goes down,
Then you go
And
for
we don't
the
need
use.
the
then you
variance.
could consider use variance criteria.
So if you
That-
think that when he got the variance for the apartment over the garage, that covered this too? Basically, that's what it's saying. If you don't think that that's what happened, then he needs a use variance.
Now you got me confused.
Back in 2000, I don't have a...
2005.
I'm sorry.
Right.
but it was a little
2005.
hectic. They got a variance to allow the
residents.
caretaker's quarters over the garage.
Right,
Right.
Which is on the main lot.
which had the ball field and other
No,
uses.
the main lot, the big
Okay.
lot. Now, this is an adjacent lot that showed the ball field, but it was not picked up in 2004 or 5, whatever you
Five.
said, sorry.
2005.
So being it wasn't picked up, he's saying that he has right to it, and that's your choice. At that time, when he got that variance, do you think it covered the ball field on that lot because it was on that application?
But that use was always in existence even prior to that.
Agreed.
That goes back to '01, that he
But
had that.
looking at my records, I didn't see that they ever included that in the variance that they got before, to have that use on the
On the other
residential
property.
lot, we'll call it, the house lot.
The applicant and the town both agree that this is a cleaning up something.
That's correct.
Right? So, as representing the town, what's the best way to clean this up? By variance?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
That
then-
would make it the neatest,
then I
because
will
now
withdraw
there's
my
going to be a clear
motion.
variance for it.
I will draw my motion and seek to approve the variance. It's a use variance. There are
Permits 2 principal.
the applications that we all know
We
about.
first have to negatively negate the
You don't have to
interpretation,
do the
no?
interpretation.
No, we just go the other
That's
way.
usually the applicant's preference to do one, because it's usually easier to get an interpretation than it is a use variance.
Right,
So
because
that's why they ask for that first. But you can go right to the use variance if that's your preference, and it's for 2 principal uses on the single lot.
When the code only allows one
The
principal
code-
use on the lot and its
Do we-
accessory uses.
do we feel that we've substantially covered the,
Criteria.
specifically the allowable use with money?
I believe he has, even though I believe in the testimony that was given by the applicant and his counsel that the incapability of earning a reasonable return of use for any of the allowable uses was proven. Properties affected by unique or at least highly uncommon circumstances was proven, will not alter the...
I'm not worried about the
Right.
other character.
Well,
It's really
for the
money
record,
one.
I think we should put him in, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, I believe was proven, and it was not self-created.
Definitely not.
Incapable of earning a reasonable return, it doesn't necessarily need to be the proof doesn't necessarily have to be, some kind of data sheet that shows it. It
You
was
know it'll
the
affect the
testimony was there.
activities of the camp and what it does, and
He explained
He
it.
did testify that it would be a substantial cost to remove the field, so.
And he did purchase it this way.
Correct. He
Well,
purchased
that's what I'm
it
saying.
as it was.
That's why self-created goes out the door, because he bought it like that. So,
Right. So,
I'm okay.
that's my motion.
All right, so do we have a second to that?
Yeah.
Second.
A
All
second,
right, John will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. John, are you for the motion?
for the motion.
Phil?
For the
Obviously,
motion.
you made it. Silvio?
For the motion.
For.
And I'm for the motion. So it's Carries as approved for the use variance.
Use, multi-use,
All
yeah.
right, yeah, 4 was held over. Minutes from December 22nd, I'll look for motion to approve as
Motion
written.
to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
That was for you, Rose.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank
You
you,
had me-
thank you,
yeah.
everyone, have a good night.